Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a really provocative question from organizational psychologist Tomas Chamorro-Permuzic. And it's this. Why? Why do so many incompetent men end up becoming leaders? All right, let me start by asking you something. Just think about your job, right? The teams you've been on, the bosses you've had. Have you ever worked with someone who is just so incredibly confident, but maybe not quite as good as they thought they were? Yeah, I'm pretty sure we can all picture somebody. A lot of the talk around leadership is about gender, and for good reason. But what if the problem is actually bigger than that? What if the real issue isn't just about the underrepresentation of women, but the overrepresentation of just plain incompetent leaders? I mean, people who just aren't good at the job, period. And that brings us to the central idea for today. It completely flips the script. Instead of only asking, hey, why aren't there more women leaders? The question we should be asking is, why do so many incompetent men become leaders? This really reframes the whole conversation, doesn't it? So how does this even happen? Well, the argument is pretty simple and kind of damning. Our whole system for picking leaders, it's broken. We're just looking for all the wrong things, or mistaking these flawed signals for actual leadership potential. And it really boils down to three big mistakes we keep making. First, we just can't seem to tell the difference between someone being confident and someone actually being competent. Second, we fall right into what's called the charisma trap. And third, well, we find narcissistic people weirdly appealing. So let's break each of these down. Okay, signal number one. This is a huge one. We mistake confidence for competence. Think about it. When someone's really assertive, they speak with total conviction. Our brains just kind of short circuit. We automatically think, wow, they must really know their stuff. And the science here is just fascinating because it shows there's almost no overlap. Literally, very little connection between confidence, which is how good people think they are, and competence, which is how good they actually are. But we get them mixed up all the time. And that misplaced confidence, it often shows up as our second big mistake, our obsession with charisma. We just love leaders who are charming, who are entertaining. But here's the kicker. The best leaders are often the exact opposite. They're humble. Sometimes to the point of being a little boring. I mean, think about the leaders who make all the headlines, right? They're often seen as these charismatic visionaries, but they can also be huge risk takers with a serious dark side. Now, contrast that with someone like former German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Was she a blockbuster movie character? Not really, but she was well prepared, rational, a great listener, and that is what stable, effective leadership actually looks like. Okay, and this love of charisma slides right into our third and final flawed signal. We just can't seem to resist narcissism. We've somehow gotten to a place where we're captivated by people who are famous just for being, well, fascinated with themselves. And we mistake that huge self-belief for some kind of powerful vision. All that popular advice out there telling us to love yourself no matter what? Well, it has a dark side. It can create these leaders who are completely unaware of their own limitations and are just unjustifiably pleased with themselves. And that means they often lack empathy, they take huge risks, and they don't really think about the consequences for anyone else. All right, so that's the problem. It's kind of bleak, right? We're basically hardwired to pick the wrong people. But, and this is a big but, the good news is we can fix this. So how do we actually start choosing better leaders? Okay, this is absolutely crucial. It's all about making a conscious switch in what we value. So instead of getting fooled by over-the-top confidence, we need to dig deeper and look for actual competence. Instead of being wowed by charisma, we should be prioritizing humility. And instead of falling for narcissism, we have to demand integrity. It's as simple and as hard as that. And check this out. Here's a really fascinating side effect of doing this. If we actually started picking leaders based on competence, humility, and integrity, guess what? We would naturally see more women in charge. Why? Because huge scientific studies show that on average, women score higher on these exact traits. So the goal isn't about hitting a quota, it's about raising the bar for everyone. All right, solution number 2. And I'm going to be honest, this one can be a tough pill to swallow for a lot of us because it flies in the face of so much advice we hear. We have to learn to distrust our instincts. Yeah, you heard me right. Distrust your gut. Why? Well, think of it this way. Something like 90% of people believe they have a fantastic sense of humor. But let's be real, how many of them are actually funny? See, our intuition about other people, especially about who'd make a good leader, is often just as biased and just as unreliable. And the final piece of the puzzle is to just maintain high standards for absolutely everyone. This means we shouldn't be telling women they need to act like the incompetent men we're trying to get rid of. It means we shouldn't rule out men who happen to be humble or lack those flawed macho traits. The point isn't to lower the standards for anyone. It's to raise the quality of leadership across the board. So we've looked at the problem, we've looked at the solutions. What does this all mean? Where do we go from here? Well, the final takeaway is that this change, it really has to start with us. Because at the end of the day, we get the leaders we tolerate. If we want to improve the competence level of our leaders, we first have to get better at judging and selecting them ourselves. If we keep falling for the same old tricks, we're going to keep getting the same old flawed leaders. And so that's the question I want to leave you with. Take a look around your own life, at your job, in your community, even in the public figures you admire. Who are you choosing to follow? And more importantly, why? Are you choosing them for the right reasons? Their competence, their humility, their integrity? Or for something else entirely? Something to think about.